Thanks for joining Assault and Battery. As a reminder to everyone, this will be spoilers all the way through the season finale of Better Call Saul. I'm sad. It's over. Such an awesome show. Before we get started, let me express from the bottom of my heart how much Sling sucks. Through when I watched this at the very beginning and at the end, and then when on the replay, they slap commercials across the previously on. There were little bumpers of the suits that were going by. I assume I only saw about 5 seconds of them before a Sling commercial slapped on top of it. There was some thank yous from the cast at the end of this episode, also obliterated by an AT&T commercial. So Sling, you suck. Wow, it is a lot to take in. They stuck the landing as far as I'm concerned. It was really, really fun episode. There's humor in it. There was touching moments, tons of callbacks. Some old friends showed up. It was just amazing. Fantastic end of the show and just wonderful. So let's roll through this bad boy together, shall we? We open up going back to you see the in color New Mexico background, and I kind of thought, oh, this is probably going to be the Walt scene, but no, it was the scene with Mike and Jimmy in the desert. You see the Esteem in the ditch, the space blanket, and them lugging along $100 bill stuck on a cactus. Mike and Jimmy trudging through the desert. And this must have been just before they got out. And fortunately, they come across a big sort of irrigation trough or tub or something like that, a big source of water in a desert was desperately needed, and they hit it up. Jimmy is able to dump his formerly full of urine drinking bottle and got some really good water in it. And Mike encourages him to slow down a little bit so he doesn't get sick. And they're resting, and Jimmy begins to muse about it's $7 million. Maybe we just take it. Mike, of course, it's not ours, not a good idea. He figures the people whose money it belongs to would kind of have a problem with it. Jimmy said that's no problem, and then goes on to a story about we could build a time machine with 6 million of the 7 million. So it's interesting. He knew the exact price a time machine would run. And Mike's kind of wondering if he's completely got sunstroke at this point in time. But he's talking through, and he asks Mike if he could go back in time, where would he go back? Kind of thinking he's a Civil War guy, he's a Roman Empire guy. And Mike originally is the typical Mike, not having any of it. But then he thinks about it a little bit. He kind of picks one date originally, which I'm assuming might have been around when Maddie got killed. But then he peels it back to March 17th, 1984, which was the first day he took a bribe. So he kind of went back to say, where did that turn occur for me that things could have been a lot different? And he kind of settled on that date. He asked Saul the same question. Saul wanted to go back to when Berkshire Hathaway, when Warren Buffett took over Berkshire Hathaway and invest his half of the remaining million post time machine and become really rich. And Mike's a little bit like, so just money, that's all. And pretty much that's all. And Saul says, let's get going. We then pick up right where the last episode had ended in black and white. Gene on the run, scrambles back to his house, gets his shoebox, and takes off. And props to the Omaha Police Department because they're on it. They're already at Gene's house. They've got helicopters. There's a big chase scene, and we see Jimmy / Saul / Gene return to the dumpster where it all began. So he tries to hide in a dumpster, but that on the ball PD department from Omaha finds him, and our friend has been nabbed. So Gene's in holding, looking pretty dejected, gets his one call. We all assumed it was going to probably Kim, but it's to the Cinnabon to kind of make sure that the shifts get worked out and everything's covered, and to let the worker know you're going to need a new manager. So I thought it was kind of cool that with everything going on, he made it a priority to take care of the folks at the Cinnabon. So you got there's some good left in this guy. That's going to get shaken here in a little bit, but it just seemed like kind of a nice touch there. And he goes into this cell. He's angry, punches the door, hurts his hand. Eventually kind of sees some graffiti scribbled about my lawyer's going to ream you on the wall, gets him laughing, and he kind of remembers, wait a second, I'm the kind of lawyer that can do that. And we get our good friend Bill Oakley back. He gives him a call, is making a pitch to represent him. It's this big break of a lifetime. It'll be great. And Oakley's talking about, hey, I'm gonna have to report this call. But he's like, I'm hiring you. I need your help, and you need to get up here, and it's going to be a career maker for you. And he's kind of got his mojo back at that point in time. And Bill's like, so what do you think where's this all going to end? How's it going to come out? And Gene says, I'm going to come out on top like I always do. So as Gene's walking down to the room to talk to the other lawyers, he spots Marie in a waiting area, and they get settled in and they start having a conversation. And the prosecution's like, after detailing the many, 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 many crimes that are involved here, saying this all totals up to around 190 years plus, and their offer is 30 years. And Gene, I don't know what we'll call him, Gene or Saul. I think we're going to go back to Saul at this point. He's kind of Saul now. So Saul says, hey, I saw Marie Schrader's out there. Why don't you bring her in? She deserves it. So she does come in. She's really not happy to see him, as you might expect. And he expresses his sympathy to Marie. I'm not sure that really went over particularly well. And then he talks about when Walter White and he first met, and the whole process of him being kidnapped and going out in front of a grave in the desert, and he was scared, and kind of told that whole story. And then the whole gliding all over episode from Breaking Bad, where and then there were 10 witnesses, including a lawyer, he's quick to point out. They're all in a span of 2 minutes wiped out in various jails. So he's like saying, this guy here is trouble. I just had to do what he told me to do. I was in fear for my life. And even though he's gone now, Pinkman and the others, whoever the others are still out there. And so he kind of spins this yarn on how he was just a victim of circumstance. Marie's not buying it at all. And the prosecutor kind of says the same thing. He says, do you think a jury will buy that? And all of a sudden, you see Saul sit back a little bit and go, one might. All I need is one. And he really has shaken the prosecution at that point in time in terms of what's going on. Marie's somewhat outraged that they'd consider doing a plea bargain with him, but he's got their attention and they realize he's pretty good at it. And all he's got to do is convince one person in that jury pool that there were forces beyond his control that put him in this situation and he could get off. Previously, Saul had asked if there was any wiggle room. Apparently there was, because now they're down to 7.5 years. And he's kind of explaining which jail he's willing to go to. He doesn't want to go to ADX Montrose, which is called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. And he has another place in mind that has a golf team. It's in North Carolina. The weather's really good. And because he's really kind of got them all snowed and rolling along, they buy into that. Which jail he's willing to go to. He doesn't want to go to ADX Montrose, which is called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. And he has another place in mind that has a golf team. It's in North Carolina. The weather's really good. And because he's really kind of got them all snowed and rolling along, they buy into that. He's really got a sweet deal. He's got the 7.5 years, his preferred prison. And then he kind of tacks on the end, every Friday, I want some Blue Bunny ice cream delivered. And they're just, beside themselves with, this is kind of crazy. And he thinks his trump card is, I can tell you about what really happened to Howard Hamlin. And that's when they let him know, oh, your ex gave a sworn affidavit on that a little while ago. And you can tell that Saul is both surprised and hurt and confused. And then we finally get our Walt scene. We're back to the Saul and Walt in the basement of the disappearers hangout, and Walt is fidgeting with a hot water heater. It's making noises. The pilot light's going on and off, and he's trying to work. He's explaining it's a thermocouple. It could be this. It could be that. Saul could care less on this. He just wants it to be quiet. And eventually, he kind of trots out, a la the cold open. Hey, if you had a time machine, where would you go? And Walt's really kind of having none of this. And time travel is impossible. He's got a little reason why. And he basically Saul has kind of gone into this, what Walt views as the scientific world, which he doesn't belong in. He goes like, stay in your lane, which I thought was just a great line in this show. And but Walt spins and goes, do you mean regrets? If you're asked about regrets, ask me about regrets. And Saul bites says, yeah, so regrets. And I kind of guess this would have been the case with Walt going back to where it would be, although his recollection of it's probably still colored by the ego that is Walt. But he does go back to gray matter and the fact that there were some of his discoveries and things were going on. And I think maybe eventually Gretchen and Elliot started to have some affection for her, and Walt did, Walt got jealous and pride hurt and kind of stepped out. So we still really don't exactly know what happens, but we do know they were in it together, and then Walt basically exited the equation and lost a lot of money in the process of that. So his biggest regret ultimately was this company, which could have led for a whole different life for Walt. And in his field, in the thing that he was important at, he would have been a man of importance and a leader and a thinker. It all went away because of that. That was his big regret. Kind of made sense. This is what I almost would have guessed Walt would say. And so now we're back again to Mike gave a real good one. Walt gave a pretty good one. And so we're back again. Saul gets his second shot to do it. And again, this was he slipped too hard at 22 when he was doing one of his slipping Jimmy moves. He slipped too hard and hurt his knee. His knee was never the same there. And Walt, much like Mike, it's like, really? That's it? So Walt gets in the second killer line of the segment, which was, so you were always like this. So now we're on a plane. Gene/Saul is going back to New Mexico, extradited back to New Mexico. Bill Oakley's on the plane as well. They have a bit of a conversation where Jimmy's trying to put together, so Kim did this and that, and Bill kind of fills her into, yeah. So there's not really going to be any legal action against her, but Howard's widow is shopping lawyers, and there could very well be a civil suit. And Saul follows up a little bit later in the conversation around, hey, get the rest of the prosecution crew back together again. I've got some real juicy stuff that's going to get me that ice cream that I wanted. And Bill's pointing out to say, hey, anything you do is going to potentially really bury Kim. And why are you doing this? And you basically get Gene going, it's really good ice cream. And you're just like, really, is this guy that vacant? And he's like angry, and this is the way he's going to get back at Kim. And boy, it just seems this whole combination of really no regrets in his life. And now it sounds like he's going to happily bury Kim further to get ice cream and to go already this amazing deal he's hooked up for 7.5 years. It's just not enough. It's just always the problem of he pushes it too far. It looks like he's doing it again, and it will likely come to bite him, you will assume. But it was a tough scene in terms of, is that really how you feel right now? Bob Odenkirk through this entire show just killing it. But not a big fan right now at this point in the show. We kind of then bop back over to Kim down in Florida, and it's kind of more of the same. Her not able to make a decision, this very kind of dreary Joe versus the volcano in black and white existence going on. And as she basically then decides to leave work a little bit early, stops by a legal aid office to volunteer to help. So it seems like she's maybe starting to get her mojo back, seeing the kind of work she could be doing. Not that the sprinkler industry is not a fine industry, but she could certainly do more to help more people. And she gets a call from her prosecutor friend in New Mexico who says, hey, Saul's been caught. Happened 2 days ago, but that's not why I'm calling. He's going to say some things that are going to directly affect you. And Saul's been caught a couple days ago, but that's really not why I'm calling. I'm calling because he's going to be saying some things about you that you ought to know about. So then one of the biggest scenes of the entire series, we've got Saul coming in a shiny suit, full kind of slime ball mode again, ready to go. You see Kim in the back of the courtroom. He kind of catches her eye. They exchange glances. They get set. Bill Oakley's his co-counsel, and they're getting ready to go. The judge is really super surprised given all of the crimes. Marie's in the crowd too, by the way, and Steve Gomez's widow. And you can tell, not very happy about this 7.5 years thing. And the judge is not happy about it either. The prosecutor's trying to talk through about, we looked at a bunch of things, and this is really right. And then Saul gets up and says, hey, I want to say a few things. It's discouraged from doing that by Bill and by the judge, but eventually does get the mic, says, I think I can save everybody some time. And he basically starts to repeat the whole story of This guy named Mayhew came in my office. The next thing I know, I'm in the desert with a gun to my head, and I was scared. But previously, he just kind of kept building on how scared he was. All of a sudden, here you see him take a turn and go, I was scared. But then when I got home that night, I said, this is opportunity. And he kind of stepped through it, and he explained that Walter White would have either been dead or in jail within a month if it wasn't for Saul Goodman. And I think he's right. I think Saul knew enough about kind of what was going on to keep Walt away from the most destructive habits. And he and Jesse were not probably going to be the drug peddling brain thrust needed to get the money that Walt eventually got. So Saul played a huge role in Walter White being Walter White, which is not necessarily a very good thing, but he's owning up to it. And this is a parade of owning up to a lot of things. I mean, there's just all kinds of cool little touches in here. Kim in the back of the courtroom with her foot tapping like we've seen many times. Neat little callback there. Jimmy kind of like names. Saul kind of explains, that he did see opportunity and he was the guy that made it happen and he made millions. And then he starts on a parade of a bunch of other things around Howard and the horrible thing that happened to Howard and his, playing some role in that happening. And Chuck, and he really finally owns the malpractice in him losing his malpractice insurance, and that was what Chuck lived for. And he was going to now have to live with the fact that he played a big role there. So he really did, does a parade of like all some of the key things that really need to be hit. And again, Odenkirk totally killing it. Super great. Not overwrought and all that, but just kind of a genuine kind of telling the story. And and then he turns to the prosecution and goes, saying all that stuff I told you about Kim was a lie. I said that stuff to get her here because I wanted her to see this. And the judge tells Mr. Goodman, sit down. And he goes, my name's McGill, Jimmy McGill, which could have come across like super hokey, but didn't, because it did really, the title of this episode was Saul Gone. And so this is really Saul Gone, kinda. We'll talk about that again in a second. But this is at least him jettisoning the Saul Goodman mojo and getting back to the Jimmy McGill, who we liked, who's a good guy. And so it was pretty cool to see that. So we had Marie and we had Walt. We thought we might be done with surprise cameos, but no, Chuck is back. And this is, I think, might have been even before, likely was before the very first episode of Better Call Saul, close to it, but just a little bit before. It's Jimmy bringing in the groceries to Chuck. Make sure he grounds himself when he comes in. And he's got, I'm trying to get you the Financial Times. I think I got a lead on that. Here are these things. So he's kind of taking care of it. Chuck wants to reimburse him. Jimmy's like, no, this is on me. Chuck's like, why are you doing this? I could have somebody hire somebody. He goes, I'm your brother. You do the same for me. I don't know about that. But this was actually kind of a cool scene because it does appear that Chuck appreciates it and recognizes that Jimmy's kind of going above and beyond. So this was kind of a rare moment of that. Before, you're not really sure if he'd had a good hand and just kind of took advantage of Jimmy a little bit there, but you do see a little bit of, I don't know if it's brotherly love or not, but at least he did seem to greatly appreciate and was touched by Jimmy's willingness to help, which was great. The chick, hey, you want to chat some more? And Jimmy's like, about what? And it's like, my cases, you'll tell me what I'm doing wrong and all that kind of stuff there. And, Jimmy's got all these kind of low end cases compared to the kind of stuff that Chuck has. So they're like, yeah, we kind of have this conversation all the time. And then in a massive tie back, and this is like crazy impressive because I think this was kind of all wrapped in. They had a lot of time to write this 6th season and really kind of pound it out all the way through. And so they were able to do a lot of really cool things at the very beginning with the big walkthrough of Saul's house, the crazy house, all the stuff. And that was the first time we saw the Time Machine book by H.G. Wells. We saw it later on the bedside with Jim and Kimmy at Kim's apartment. So it was there. And then as the Chuck and Jimmy conversation Chuck reaches over and grabs his copy of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. And we've had Time Machine conversation in this final episode with Mike and with Walt. And now we kind of see where that kind of knit in all the way across. So I thought it was a really super nice touch to pull that all together, and a real evidence of the great chance they had to really, they're always good at it, but with even a little extra time for the final season, they just kind of weave this in a really big way. And so it was a neat reveal. You really kind of kept wondering when the episode was going to end, because the court scene could have been the ending. Could have been a nice way to go at the very end with Jim and Kim looking at each other after he's kind of come clean on all this stuff. But it didn't. Came back and we got Chuck. And the Chuck conversation was good. And there's Chuck walking away with the lantern at the end of it. And also could have been a nice way to bring it to an end. But then come back again, and there's one last one, and they really do a nice job here to truly wrap it up. Jimmy's on his way to the Alcatraz of the Rockies. That's where he ended up going. And he gets recognized by multiple people on the bus, and a big Better Call Saul chant erupts. So he's apparently going to be okay in the Alcatraz of the Rockies, because they all seem to be fans. And so he's going to be okay in the Alcatraz of the Rockies. They all appear to be fans. They get there now. Jimmy's able to put his past Cinnabon work to use, and he's now I thought he was going to be a jail room or a jailhouse lawyer. Apparently he's going to be a jailhouse baker, and so he's bringing that kind of knowledge to bear on all that. So they're kind of working in there, and someone comes over and says, "Hey, your lawyer's here." And so he heads out, and everybody's calling him Saul. So he's in ADX. He's Saul. So he heads down there, and he gets to the holding center. It is Kim, and it's Kim. She's gotten rid of her super wiggy looking, straight, stringy, dark hair, and it's still dyed. It's not blonde anymore, but it's styled a little more in a Kim Wexler type mode, a little more stylish. Looks very nice. But it's just not as kind of frumpy as before. And turns out her New Mexico law license doesn't have an expiration date. And so she was able to kind of get her way in there to be his lawyer. And so they're just not a big chat here, but we get, again, kind of another little callback and everything coming full circle. Jim and Kimmy, and now it is Jim, it's not Saul. It's Jimmy and Kim leaning up against the wall, sharing a cigarette. And they've done this a couple times in the black, because we stayed black and white for all the Gene timeline, including this scene here. But when he steadies her hands to light the cigarette that he's starting on, the flame is in color. So it's just like we've seen earlier when the Saul commercial showed up, they were like bright bits of color in Gene's life. And this kind of Kim's there with him, again, a little bit of light, kind of another super nice touch. Apparently his 7.5 years has now become 86. I guess better than the 190, but still 86 years. Jimmy's quick to point out, you never know with good behavior. Pretty sure that's going to still be 43 years. So not great for him, but he seems to be at peace with it. Kim seems to be at peace with him, which is pretty cool that they just really kind of meant a lot to each other. So it's kind of neat to see them kind of reconnecting. And so she kind of heads out. She's heading out through the front gate. Jimmy has made his way out to the courts and the yard for the inmates, and they're able to kind of see each other. And another just great composed shot of these kind of parallel chain link fences, them both kind of in profile facing each other a little bit, cutting back to each of them a little. Very cool. All the stuff's in glorious black and white. Looks super great. And Jimmy finishes off with giving her the finger guns, and she heads off. And that is the end of Better Call Saul. A fantastic show. Really enjoyed it. Great ending. This was a wonderful series. I'm going to be so disappointed I don't have something to look forward to anymore. On a much less important note and a much less interesting entertainment, there are some holes in our assault and battery catalog. There's certain parts of certain seasons that have not been covered. We may go back and do those just so we got to get every show covered. But I got all this last part of the 6th season done here, and appreciate any of you who've watched. Give any comments and suggestions. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I have. And I do want to remind everybody, Sling sucks, because they did it again at the end with the thank yous. The cast is giving thank yous. Boom, commercial. Boom, commercial. And so I see the first 5 seconds of it and the last 5 seconds of it. Super irritating. They're replaying the episode on AMC right after the last one. Did the same thing again to the previously on. So, Sling, you suck. I hate you so much. But on a happy note, thanks for watching, folks. I really enjoyed doing this. Thanks.